In this video, I wanted to show you how I made the clothing for my Venice Carnival costume. Instead, you will see me struggle to make the skirt and the top because I am not very bright and I never read patterns properly. You will also see me failing completely in making my porcelain corset, but first, hi, I am Artist. Welcome to my little studio in which I create costumes, boxes and embroidery. I decided to reuse that butterick pattern for the base. I had made this costume about 7 years ago, so you might think redoing it would be easy. Well, not quite. I haven't traced the pattern onto the pattern paper and I already have a problem. This is starting very well. It is written, lines shown are cutting lines. So my understanding is I need to add seam allowance. But then it is written, however, 1.5 centimeter seam allowances are included unless otherwise indicated. See sewing information. The lines are the cutting lines, but it is actually seam allowance. A little bit confusing, but okay. Sewing information, it's written, seam allowances are included unless otherwise indicated. Okay, so I don't need to add seam allowance, but something is weird that on the sleeves and on the hems usually you have more than just 1.5 centimeters, and here there is nothing indicating that I need to add more. So did they add already like what it is usually 3 centimeters? I don't know. And also there is something weird on this stuff here that is the guide for inside belt. It is written 1.5 centimeter hem just on this side here. So what does it mean? Does it mean that it is added already? But then why do you tell me it is added there if it's supposed to be added everywhere? Or did you put it there because I have to add it? But then you should have said add 1.5 centimeter hem. I don't know. I'm already confused. I haven't started yet. So for that project, I definitely need to do a mock-up. And the thing is, I already did that dress. That's this one here. But when I did it, it was one of my first projects. It doesn't really fit properly. It was too short, too large. So I don't know, I definitely will trace it on the paper, add more seam allowance, then I can cut it after if it's too much. And I will do a mock-up because otherwise it's going to look ridiculous. So that's a good start. After studying the pattern again, I realized I had completely misinterpreted the cutting lines as sewing lines. It took me 5 whole hours to figure out that mistake. Yes, 5. And yes, I felt very dumb. Once that was sorted out, another problem popped up. The pattern said nothing about lining but kept mentioning underlining. And since I wasn't sure what the difference was, I had to do some research. I think I know what I'm going to do. I will do an underlining. When I did this dress, I didn't know what the difference was between underlining and lining, so I basically did a lining. Here, from what I read, taffeta is pretty thin, and in order to give it more structure, you add the underlining. So there is interfacing, and then there is underlining. So we have 3 layers altogether. When you have a seam and when you iron it, on some fabrics, you might see underneath that there is the seam allowance. But if you have the underlining, you are not going to see it anymore. So that's why it is added there in that pattern. So there is no lining here. Obviously, because I didn't know, I bought some lining. I will probably save it for another project. And this is my taffeta fabric. What I will do then is use some cotton as underlining and then I will see if I want to add a lining, and in case I do, I will use this fabric. Finally, I was back on track. But before tracing the pattern onto tracing paper, I tried on the top I had made years ago to see how much extra length I needed. The skirt pieces I traced directly on the floor, so my niece could remind me the next day what a great idea that was. In the end, I added 7 centimeters to the bodice and 5 centimeters to both the skirt and the sleeves. When the pattern was ready, I moved on to making a mock-up from fabric scraps. Naturally, I chose the ugliest combination possible because my mock-ups always hurt the eyes. The skirt fit perfectly, but the top needed some reworking. It looks ugly as fuck, but the mock-up is not supposed to be sexy, it's supposed to be functional to make sure that you did your pattern right, and good that I did because I didn't cut my sleeves properly. The pattern was too short on one side. One thing that I need to modify is here, the length. I like it the way it is, but there is 1.5 centimeters seam allowance and I don't want to have it shorter. So I will cut again all the pieces, add 2 extra centimeters. And I'm glad I did the mock-up because in the end I will have added 9 centimeters. So otherwise it would have been, here 7 centimeters shorter, which is like way too short. And with the pattern adjusted, it was time to iron my fabric and the underlining, 8 meters of each, and then cut everything out. Some pieces I didn't need to trace onto paper since they were the same for all sizes, but they were so wrinkled that I had to iron them before cutting. Next came my favorite part, preparing each piece by sewing the fabric and underlining together. To assemble the garment, I started with the skirt. It was straightforward, no pockets to accidentally sew inside out this time. But of course, I still needed a challenge, and for this skirt, it was the placket. I'm always trying to improve the quality of my work, so each project is a little better than the last. And look at this babe. No, not that one. This one. Yes, it is perfect. With the skirt panels assembled, the belt sewn on, and the hem stitched by hand, the skirt was officially done. The making of the top started off well, but unfortunately, that didn't last long. Here is what we have so far. The bodice is done. I just need to add the collar and the sleeves. The reason why I didn't add the collar right away is because I want to do a lining in the end. I don't like it the way it is. I'm not sure you will see it properly, but I don't know. It's not clean like that. I don't like it. So what I will do is prepare a lining and I will sew the collar last. Now I will move on to the sleeves. The sleeves, always give me trouble. To build them, I had to sew the 2 sleeve parts together, gather and attach the lower seam of the oversleeve, gather and baste the upper seam of the oversleeve to the sleeve, gather and baste the sleeve head, gather and baste the sleeve to the bodice, and finally sew everything together. At every single stage, something went wrong. The first mistake, at least the first one I noticed, was basting the sleeve head into the armpit instead of the shoulder. I unpicked it and tried again, but then came problem number 2. I had used crinoline instead of interfacing for the sleeve head simply because I had crinoline on hand and wanted to use it up. Big mistake. It was way too stiff and my shoulder looked like it was having an erection. Goodbye crinoline, hello interfacing. Once I fixed that, I sewed the sleeve to the bodice and then, well, here is the result, and obviously it fucking sucks. So in moments like that, I'm like, why the hell do I sew? First problem, why is that so low? It should be there. And also, even though I matched the symbols, so I don't get it, because the seam is here, but it should be more there. That should be shifted somehow. And also, one thing that is fucking weird, why is the seam going in the back? It should be in the middle there, but there it goes like back. I don't know. Oh god, it pisses me off. So I can remove it and redo it again. And I'm like, is it really the right sleeves? Because I often make the mistakes between left and right, but I checked and it's supposed to be this one. So, and the symbol matched, everything matched, and yet it looked like crap. If you've been paying attention, you can probably guess what happened. This was my first time trying on the sleeve, and this was me trying it on again on the other arm. Why did I switch arms? No idea. How long did it take me to realize my mistake? Let's find out. I reread the instructions, and well, obviously, I made a mistake because, as always, I went too fast and didn't read the instructions properly. For the first placement line, I thought there is a seam, here there is a seam, so obviously you need to match them. No, you don't. So that's the first mistake. And in order to rectify that one, I will have to unbaste everything. So once this is fixed, we will see how it goes. I think as well the shoulder is too low for me, so I will probably sew 2 centimeters instead of 1.5 here. Then I will go back to 1.5 around, but at least at the top I will go for 2 because otherwise, yeah, it's low, it's ugly, and hopefully the rest of the sleeves will be sewn properly. Cue and less seam ripping, a skill I master. I reread the pattern, and even though it is entirely my fault because I didn't read the instruction properly and I didn't reproduce the squares onto the fabric, but because bad faith compels, I need to blame it on the pattern. So here is my placement line. Here is the square that I need to match. But the thing is, this seam here will have to be sewn on top, and on the placement line, you need to sew this seam here with no square. So it's not entirely my fault, let's say. I had the pattern markings aligned, or so I thought. Turned out I did it wrong again. I basted and sewn the oversleeve to the sleeve. Look at my face. It looks like I'm about to cry. More instruction reading followed because I still could not understand why the shoulder seam sat way too low compared to my mock-up. So I kept going, attaching sleeve and oversleeve to the bodice and checked the fit. Et ben voilà! Now it is nice, and now I am happy. Reading patterns makes sewing easy. And now that we are done with this one, it's time to move on to the second one. But first, let's thank the God for giving us only 2 arms. Didn't think it would take me that short a time to complain again about these sleeves. So this is the other one. Turned out it is a left sleeve. Why on fucking earth do I have 2 left sleeves? I don't know how many times I made that mistake. And after maybe the 50th time, I'm like, maybe you should be careful when you sew sleeves together because you always mix them. So I was careful, but apparently not enough. Again, clear lining, replace everything. I wonder if it wouldn't be easier for me to amputate my right arm. Let's get into it. Do I need to tell you what happens next? I probably don't. Now, I do have both sleeves, and that one is perfect, which makes me realize that this one is still not. The seam is not where it should be. Even then, I hadn't realized I sewn the wrong sleeve, so I was trying to explain all the things that went wrong and why I was confused. But it was also confusing that even I didn't understand what I was saying. All that to say that I will have to unpin and resew that sleeves for the third time. It was only while editing the video and watching the footage back that I finally realized I had used the wrong sleeve from the very beginning. The good news is, after what felt like a lifetime of unpicking, basting, and resewing, the sleeves were finally finished. The lining came next, and for once, no disasters. Boring! But honestly, the kind of boring I desperately needed. Sewing the lining to the fabric is always confusing for me. Just as my brain can't fully grasp the difference between left and right, it also refuses to comprehend lining construction. So instead of trying to machine sew it and risk another meltdown, I stitch it by hand. Much safer for my sanity. The last steps were attaching the collar and sewing on the snap fasteners. And with that, the top was finally done. Porcelain corsets are so beautiful that, of course, I wanted to make one for myself. I watched a couple of YouTube videos and then tried to reproduce the process. For my first attempt, I wrapped myself in cellophane and then in tape to make a pattern. Problem number 1. I wrapped myself way too tightly, not on purpose, but the tape squeezed the cellophane so much that it shrunk at the top and bottom. Problem number 2, the tape was too thin, so it didn't cover the area properly, making it almost impossible to trace a clean pattern. So I tried again with a different tape, wider but transparent, very useful to see if the area is covered or not. So the tape method doesn't work for me, I don't like it, and the other issue that I have is in the tutorial that I saw, she had two pieces, so one here, one there. She glued them together, and I didn't want to have the seam there. And also then I thought, how will it take the shape of her body if she had just like one piece here? It won't take the curve here because it's foam. Usually she does her cosplay with Worbla, so Worbla is fine because you can curve it. She curves it on the mannequin. But then she also explained that like the method, how to do it with EVA foam, and I don't think it can work. So I decided to do a method that I like, which is using paper, fabric, and then I remember that I had already done it. So why not use this one? Change of plans again. I had a look on YouTube to see different kind of corset and how they made it. And the reason why the first method that I wanted to do didn't work is because I wanted my corset to end here. So the foam would not do the curve here. What most creators have on YouTube is that the corset stops there. So you have the only one shape and it's fine. And then they cover everything with Worbla. I think I will go back to that method. This time I managed to connect two brain cells together and had a better idea. Use the mannequin. It was so much easier and the pattern looked great. After some adjustment, I cut it out in 2mm EVA foam. By the way, doesn't the shape remind you of someone? I have the basic shape and it looks pretty good. There is something that bothers me though, something that seems to be missing, my boobs. But that's okay, it can be fixed as well. Then I cut a piece of Worbla slightly larger than the foam, used a heat gun to attach them, and folded the Worbla edges behind the EVA foam. I want to decorate the corset with filigree. So what I did is to try a couple of different molds that I bought with different material. I tried with Worbla because it's something that people use a lot but doesn't work for me, probably because the molds that I have, some of them are really small. So instead I use hot glue. It doesn't look really clean, and to clean around the edges will be really difficult. I also tried some foam clay. Now foam clay I didn't like at first because I had the same problem here. You really need to apply the clay properly, not on top of these areas there, otherwise you need to clean it up, and it's pretty annoying, but it does work with a very tiny cutter. The problem with foam clay is that it shrinks a lot. And also other products that I want to try is liquid clay, and I have these polymorph beads as well. I think I will try these two for the small details. I will make this one, and I think I will make more of these because I like them as well. Turned out I didn't like foam clay after all, and I didn't like this big mold either. Polymorph pebbles didn't work well for this project, so in the end I did all my filigrees with liquid clay, which turned out to be magical because it stays flexible and is easy to paint. While the clay was baking, I painted the corset with several coats of primer. Baking's ready! That was not liquid clay. Once the molds cooled, I popped the filigrees out and just sat there admiring them for a while. I have to have a little break here because my boy wants a hug. What I will work on today is continue the corset, obviously start with the painting and everything, and I will as well start to dismantle that bed here because I want to reuse the beads, especially on the corset. And I was also thinking about removing the lacing and probably use it on the other dress. I'm not sure yet if I will do it or no, but I tried with one that I removed from the back and it doesn't look too bad, so I might reuse them as well. But now it's cuddle time. When cuddle time was over and after eating 6 muffins, I punched the hole for lacing with a leather tool. I didn't want eyelets, just clean holes. To paint the corset, I thought it would be easiest to lace it directly onto the mannequin, which I covered with a plastic bag. Great idea, except for the fact that I did not want to paint the ribbon, so I had to unlace the corset. Clever is definitely not my middle name. While the corset paint was drying, I painted the filigrees in the same color as the garment fabric. Then I placed them on the corset, marked the position, and moved on to drawing the porcelain pattern. I traced a big part of the design that I want for the porcelain. I was thinking that I would not draw anything here, just have the filigree, because I thought that if I had the filigree on top of the design, it would be very messy. But if I leave it like this, it will be weird with nothing in between the filigree. So what I will do, instead of copying everything, I will just print the design and I will cut the shape, and I will not do it half only, I will do the full thing. Then that will take me ages. I will remove all the part here to make the template. I don't remember how it's called in English. I will lay the paper on top of the corset and then I will paint like this, probably with a sponge. It will be easier So I will paint directly in the holes that I will make in the paper, and I will add the filigrees on top. I think that will be the best looking design for the corset. Preparing the pattern was actually fun, but when I looked at how much material I'd have to cut out by hand to create the stencil, I felt completely overwhelmed. I turned to my laser cutter instead, but not before pausing to admire how the design looked on the corset. My first stencils were experiments. Plastic bag, too thin. Vinyl, sticky, and the design didn't work. So then I changed the design. I tried it on baking paper, didn't work. Cardboard, better but not quite. And finally, a plastic folder. Oh wow, finally we have something that is working, even though it's not perfect. The first issue is that it is not sticky, so not all the edges will be flat on the corset, especially when I come towards the edges. But at least for the center, it will be alright. What I can do is to stick it with some tape on the corset and then like print the paint with a sponge. I was also thinking that one method that might be good is to use a transfer paper to have the lines that I need to paint. My only concern is that I'm not sure then the lines won't be visible through the paint, and painting is definitely not my strong suit, so I want to try to make my life as easy as possible. I did a couple of tries with the paint and it doesn't look too bad. Now I didn't have a lot of paint on my sponge, so it's normal that it's not complete. Something that I need to be careful about is the sponge going outside of the stencil. One thing also that I did is to clean it up before reapplying to make sure, because as you can see there is quite a lot of paint obviously, and what I would not want is when I place it back is to have paint in wrong places. Before painting, I cut 2 larger stencils and increased the edge margins to make sure the sponge wouldn't touch the corset. Then I mixed my paint and finally applied it. I fucking hate painting. It works fine on the paper. Obviously here it looks like crap. I wetted my sponge a little bit because it was very dry, and that was probably a big mistake because it was way too wet. And I am thinking about what I will do now. I will try to remove the paint, try to repaint it white, but I don't know. I'm not sure it won't be visible. I painted the corset and obviously it looks really bad, and I don't really even want to try to salvage it. I was thinking that maybe instead of doing the paint directly onto the corset, I could paint paper and then attach the paper to the corset. That would look good, and I did try it. It doesn't look really clean, and I think it's because with the paint that I used, so I did a mix, and this is acrylic as well, but these two here, I have no idea what it is. It's really old stuff that I got, and I wonder if it's not oil-based paint. So that's why it's really sticky and it's not as clean as the tries that I did yesterday that were only with acrylic paint. I could maybe try to buy more acrylic paint in order to have the color that I want, the same color as the fabric, but I really don't like painting. So I was thinking about using the same fabric that I use for the corset before, which is this one. It is really nice, and I was thinking that maybe I could add some beads here and there. And then I had another idea. I have wanted to try Lunéville crochet for a while now. It is a very beautiful technique, and I was thinking that with this technique I could just create the embroidery completely. or I can just do it with satin stitch and stuff like that, which will probably take me about 2 years. That would take me a long time, for sure. I will keep thinking about the corset. It will definitely not be ready on time for the next video that I will release. And I will probably have a video just for the corset, because the way I'm going now, I think it's going to take me a lot more time. So we'll see. Now I have the updated pattern for the corset, which looks nicer, I found, now with the two designs. Some of the parts will be made using beads, the rest will be thread. And I also receive my fabric, so I will use this one as a base. It's like white satin. And then I have two kind of organza. I think I will use that one because it's whiter and it seems to be more stable as well. So I will do some samples to see what kind of fabric I want to use and how I will do the embroidery. Now I will show you that in another video, because obviously that will take me a couple of weeks, maybe month to complete. In the meantime, if you like this video, if you want to see more of my creations, please like and subscribe. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye! And to prevent the seams from being visible on the